Hi, welcome back to Ask a Creationist from Core Academy of Science. I'm Todd Wood. I'm president of Core Academy, and I am the young age creationist on the hot seat this week as we consider the challenging question, what do we do about, what do I think personally about COVID-19, the current coronavirus? If you've watched our previous videos that we've produced here in quarantine, we've looked at what is a virus, we've looked at what good are viruses, and now it makes sense, I think, unfortunately, to talk about what in the world do we do about this particular virus. And there it is. That's a picture of the coronavirus in question, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, in case you're wondering the technical names for it. And my response to that question, what do I think about COVID-19? Well, it's complicated. And one thing that I know is that people are stressed, some people are angry, and a lot of people are afraid. And I think it would be wise for all of us to go out of our way to be as kind to each other as we possibly can during this crisis. Let's get into that a little bit more. There are a few things in this crisis that I know for sure. One thing is that people are dying, and this will continue. So when we're talking about this disease, we are talking about people's lives, period. So this isn't something that we can just sort of flippantly shrug off, I think. I don't believe that we should be treating this just like a common cold or something like that. This is genuinely serious. Genuinely serious. I also know that the stats that we're getting, the statistics on who's sick and how many people are dying and how many people are dying from the disease and so forth, these are all statistics that are in progress. And these statistics are likely to change even while this is going on. And it's possible that they will change pretty dramatically. I know the worst case scenario predictions have already been revised down, and you can expect that that will continue to happen. The thing about what we're doing, of course, is that it looks like we're overreacting. And if it works, then it will work because we reacted in this way. And you may look at the stats and go, look, there's not as many people died as we expected. That's right, because we've reacted in the way that we have. So expect things to change as time progresses. This is just the nature of the outbreak. Now, I do want to mention that this disease, COVID-19, is not directly comparable to any other causes of death. I've seen a lot of this going around on social media that, the flu is much more deadly in terms of numbers, or there's many more people die from car accidents or heart disease or drunk driving and so forth. This isn't at all comparable to that, okay? So, first of all, in the case of influenza, COVID-19 spreads way faster and easier than influenza, and it's got a higher fatality rate. So, true that influenza kills more numbers of people, but influenza is already here, it's already widespread, and we already have pretty effective treatments for it. None of those things are true with COVID-19. We're talking about rapidly spreading disease that has the potential to overwhelm our ability to cope with it, which is why we're reacting in the way that we are. And the situation simply isn't comparable. I mean, drunk driving, no one catches drunk driving. No one catches car accidents. Heart disease is not contagious from one person to another. You're comparing apples and oranges. There's no point in making those kinds of comparisons. Now, what should we think about this as Christians? And I want to emphasize here, there are lots of ways to think about this. There are lots of Christian ways to think about this. There are ways that emphasize service. There are ways that emphasize loving your neighbor. There are ways that emphasize public policy. I'm not going to pretend like I'm giving you the Christian perspective on COVID-19, but I do have some thoughts that maybe you might find helpful. So the first thing I note here is that Christianity in its history, especially in, say, the first 500 years, people didn't understand plagues. Plagues were, pretty common, and Christians became just remarkably well known for their reactions to plagues, where when a plague would come through, the victims, generally speaking, in the earliest days, were just thrown out to die. There was no sympathy. It was just an every man for himself attitude. It was the ultimate case of fear and overreacting, and it led to just an enormously high death rate. So even while people were trying to get rid of the sick so that they wouldn't get it, they ended up getting it, right? And what Christians would do, of course, would be to serve those who were sick, even to the point of getting the disease and dying from it themselves. And in doing that, lots of people, lots of lives were saved because basic care was necessary in order to save those individuals who were sort of the borderline cases, right? So today, you know that most people who come down with COVID-19 do not require hospitalization. And even in the cases of those that do, most of those people survive. And it's because of this care that they do survive. In those days, everyone was just sort of looking out for number one, looking out for themselves. And when Christians came in and said, no, we're going to take care of the sick, this was a big advance. It was a big change. And it led to survival rates that were much higher than the rates of non-Christians. Now, today things are different, right? Now we know more about what causes disease and how to handle it. And I know that instead of just going out and serving the sick directly, I know that there are doctors and nurses who are far more qualified to do that than I am. There are ways, of course, that I can serve the sick, and many people have taken up those things. They've taken up the call to manufacture medical equipment, such as face masks, or I've even seen people working on devices that are involved in respirators or intubating people that are sick, just so that hospitals have more. Those are great things. But I also know that if you don't have those kinds of abilities and skills, that you can still serve others by avoiding physical contact. I know for sure that this will limit the spread of the virus. And that means I know for sure that that will reduce the number of people who die. And this then becomes an act of self-sacrifice, right? This is an act of, I give up my rights, I give up what I want, my financial well-being, in order to save the lives of a few. And that is, in my mind, an incredibly Christ-like thing to do. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I just want you to understand that giving up what you want so that to save someone else's life, that's what Jesus did. It is. It just is. So if you want to be like Christ, that's one way to do it. Now, on the issue of public policy, should we endanger the financially most vulnerable to save the physically most vulnerable? I mean, this was the first thing that came into my mind when the orders came down to shut down the restaurants and shut down unnecessary retail, non-essential retail. I thought about all of those workers who are working barely making minimum wage, maybe a little bit above minimum wage, the working poor, right? We're putting those people in danger to save the lives of some other people. And I don't know that I would want to have to make that choice, but I will tell you this. The danger from COVID-19 is immediate, and it's life-threatening right now. There are programs in place, there are charities in place that can help people. Obviously, we've got the government stimulus package and so forth that can help people who are financially struggling from what's happening here. So the danger isn't quite as immediate. Any way you go, I don't like doing this math. I don't like doing this math of who's the right person to put in danger and who's the right person to save. This isn't the way I want to do things. This isn't the way I want to live my life. Ultimately, though, I think medical experts really are doing the best they can to advise us on how to handle this. And I think we need to cut them some slack because, as I said, the stats are constantly changing. We don't know enough about this to make really good choices. We don't have really good treatments at this time. And I think we need to be gracious and kind as possible. And that's what I want to leave you with. Remind you, Christians who are watching this, that you have been graciously forgiven and you need to forgive generously. As Christ told us, Matthew 18, the parable of the ungrateful servant who did not recognize what a blessing he had been given by being forgiven this massive debt. The measure with which we forgive others is the measure with which we will be forgiven. And I've seen a lot of ugliness going around, people just storming off social media, people getting into massive fights on social media over this issue. Be kind. We're all struggling. We're all suffering. We're all doing the best we can. And be kind and generously forgive as you have been forgiven. And that's really all I got to say. I'm not a virologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not really qualified to evaluate all the nuances and ins and outs of this virus, so take my thoughts for what they are. If you enjoyed this video, please check us out on coursei.org. There you will find links to our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you really enjoyed it, please consider a contribution to Core Academy. We, like many ministries, are struggling now to meet our basic expenses. So thanks for watching.